So what we'll do first, I'll have a little run through specs.
Yes.
That
Old.
has got some experience to it, isn't it?
Time to go. So yeah, so I was fit at Titleist in St Ives about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
23 handicap.
Okay.
I want to say. Back then I was playing on a long course. I say long, Langley Park in London.
Okay. Yeah.
Fairly long, tight, sort of par 4. I've now moved to Shooters Hill, which is a shorter course where driving distance doesn't really give you anything but danger.
Okay, as you said, shorter and tighter.
Yeah. So I've gone from sort of driving all of the time to using it 3 or 4 times around. And just consistency's gone, belief's gone. I know I can hit it, but it's just not very frequent. I practice 3 times a week now. On track, man.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to see what I'm doing wrong. Club path inside a lot, but I'm working on that with a coach just to try and straighten it out. But it's always face open and hill. That's just what I consistent through all of the sessions. It's face open, in the hill, inside. I'm starting to get it more neutral and sometimes a little negative, which is, I guess I don't really want to see negative, but it shows I'm moving in the right direction from being positive. So
has that been more specifically with driver, that inside part of open face?
No, drivers specifically. Most irons are pretty consistent. So I think for me, I'm 3 to tee 3 or 4 times around, 2 or 3, maybe 4 times around.
That, doesn't it? Yeah.
And it's my iron shots are just what's sort of saving me, iron putting around the greens. So really it's just confidence off the tee with a driver, which is really hurting me.
Yeah. And this problem is that you kind of, it's if you're not in play off the tee, you're constantly battling kind of behind the 8 ball trying to catch up, aren't you? So
because it's a different game when you're in the middle of the fairway or even in the light rough, but when you're fighting trees.
There's no easy recovery there, is there? I mean, the good side is that there is something fairly standout in terms of driver spec. So swing weight wise, even taking that the Arcos out, swing weight's pretty heavy. So it's not long. It's kind of on the longer side of standard tightness, do 45 and a quarter, but it's up almost D7 swing weight, which is pretty darn heavy. So if you've got a tendency for it to drop inside anyway, then a heavy bottom end is going to do that even more, hence the face staying a little bit open.
And it does have, so it is weighted, I think it's +2 or +4 when I got fit originally in the head. So it's definitely got a heavier weight in the head as well.
At least it's meant to be heavier. But that is, I mean, so D7 of these is really heavy. So, and the problem with that is it's then just prohibitive from a swinging point of view. There's just, especially taking into account where, let me just to see where this is. Your fairway wood's pretty much on standard length, D1.5, so pretty neutral. Same family of shafts, just slightly heavier weights. There's nothing kind of out of sync from a setup point of view there. And so 6 irons, we haven't done the whole set, but 6 iron wise, KBS Tour shaft 120, so not light, but it's not a tip balance shaft, and that's C8.5. So assuming the rest of irons, I won't swing weight them, but just to make sure that's not just a one-off, but the rest of the irons track off that, then there's nothing else in the rest of the bag that's tip heavy. So the driver kind of stands up like a sore thumb from a setup point of view. So we'll see how that tracks. But because you're with the, so 5 irons the same. So with those, you're not having to put much effort in to get the toe through with anything else in the bag. Even 3 would a little bit more than the irons, but that's relatively light swing weight on the irons. But then that's just gonna, I mean, D7 would be heavy anyway, even if they were a neutral swing weight. The irons are a little on the lighter side. So if they were D0, D1, D7 is still the equivalent of
and it makes sense because
12, 13 grams heavier in the head.
I feel like I have to do so much now to protect from going right, and then obviously you overdo it, and you go left, and that's where I just get so sort of lost in golf.
The good news is there's definitely something that is very, very doable.
Yeah.
Because it's I can multitask. So it's quite exaggeratedly head heavy compared to the others. So there's a very distinct difference. And even into the 3-iron whilst it's a different set of components. Into the hazardous smoke at 90 grams, not light, but it's not tip heavy.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot of continuity through the rest of the set.
But not the driver.
And then the driver, so slightly stronger balance in the head than the irons, but only to the point that it's a fairly neutral setup. So, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it felt wrong, but you just don't know. Because I was like, is it just my swing? Do I just need to keep working at it? But then I was watching some of your videos, and where you're talking about the shafts and the heads. I was like, no, I think I do need to just see where it is and come in.
And there's, so they're really something really quite pointed as well. So, yeah,
it's good. It's not just in my head.
It's not you. It's good. So, whilst I'll just run through the rest of these, if you want to grab any club you like, I'd have a loosen up. I've got the 7 here, depending on what you want to.
I'd take the 7 much.
There we go.
Okay.
And because it's the longest club in the bag, that bottom end weighting is kind of exaggerated because that's the one you're getting the most momentum build up, the strongest energy transfer. Anything in particular from a swing point of view that you're working on?
Really, it's just path and face to path. Because I know I get the tendency to get really stuck in it. I can get like 8-9 degrees inside.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm just trying to get it as neutral as I can without overdoing it.
Naturally right-handed?
Yes.
Any other sports in particular you've done a lot of?
No, not really. It's just been, last 5 years, just been golf.
It's one of those things, it's a time-heavy sport, so mixing it with other ones is quite tough.
Yeah, and I quite like not having to run.
Any injuries at all?
A niggly shoulder from poor posture, but
left or right?
Left.
Okay.
But it doesn't really affect golf.
Yeah, because it tends to, there's a little, if it was the outside, you might get a bit of a stretch in the backswing, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to affect golf. It's more just, I know when I sleep in it, funny, it hurts, but I feel fine on a golf course.
Got it.
Right. Come on.
What got you into golf originally?
My friend has a villa in Marbella, Mijas, and it looks onto a golf course. And I was just like, wow, it looks really fun. So we went to the local range in Mijas, came back, bought a set of golf clubs on eBay and haven't looked back.
Years of frustration later.
Right. There we go.
Yeah, paths are all pretty neutral.
Yeah,
last one, 0.2, so certainly the feel you're working on, definitely not getting anywhere near too much from the inside.
Yeah, I know. I know I do have a tendency with face, but yeah, I've been working on just trying to keep it neutral as I can.
Yeah. It's really where you've been able to practice with one of these machines, you're really kind of dialing in on just particular keys, you can focus in on them. That's certainly what I've found over the years, being able to kind of say, right, that's a number I want to get between these two, and sometimes ball flight can give you a slightly different impression of what's going on based on heel or a toe strike or a bit of gearing.
Yeah. And I know that even with my irons, I'm still seeing heel strike. So another point is just really trying to zero in on the middle and or even the toe. I'm trying to feel more. How do I get to the toe?
Yeah, no, path lines are that really nice. Very slight fade, move.
Terrible strike, but.
Yeah, so through the irons, they're all very, very consistent in terms of that swing rate around the C8.5 mark.
Yeah.
And wedges, because they've got the heavier shaft and a little heavier, but very, very neutral to kind of vertical and standard. And so yeah, the driver in the whole set is pretty standout.
Okay. Yeah. Because it does feel standout.
So swing must have as many loosenings as you need.
Yeah.
It's a cold morning. What ball do you play?
Pro V1.
Yeah.
Well, I prefer the Pro V1, but I've started on the Pro V1X because it's scoring better.
Okay.
Don't know why. I prefer the soft feel of the Pro V1, but I've just,
okay.
Bizarre. So I've got Pro V1Xs at the moment.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've found, anything?
It's just not being lost. So, yeah, that's the only, because I prefer the Pro V1.
Yeah.
And because I know I can hit a really high ball.
Okay.
And
yeah.
so I prefer the Pro V1, but yeah, it's just, I'm not losing the X as much. So I've decided to just stick with it.
Yeah. What size glove do you wear?
Medium. I've got medium-sized hands, but quite long fingers, so it's really tough to find a glove.
So one of the things we're doing in each fit is giving, see how that one fits. We give everyone one of these GX gloves.
Perfect.
So basically they're made in Indonesia, made from compressed leather. A chap we're partnering up with on this, he's sourced all the materials, basically took them a FootJoy Pure Touch glove as a template and said kind of, can you make one of these and how much is it going to be? And so because there's a lot of middlemen cut out, because of the finger length, it might be feel a bit big.
It's fine. I think it's
because the finger length being longer, that's where the medium large might be more appropriate. So really, really good quality leather. Actually, I'll give you that pouch. Keeps in that. But since we're giving everyone one the fitting, but they do a setup where cost-wise are slightly different to where your normal premium leather glove would be. So they're around £9–10 a glove.
Oh, good, because I usually do play the Titleist players, but obviously it's winter and it rains a lot, so it's a FootJoy Weathersoft for winter. But no.
So essentially, it's a very, very similar leather to those.
Yeah, it feels nice,
but not at a £25
price tag. So. Okay.
So one for everyone in the fit.
Perfect. So I think one more, and I think I'm ready.
Yeah, it's interesting because those ones have been with the Pro V1 and being a 7-iron, actually spin-wise, if you take the previous swing that was very, very neutral, a little on the lower side for where I'd want 7-iron to be. So that's possibly where the X is just giving you a slightly better ball flight. So it's not going to launch wildly higher, but will just hold a few hundred revs more spin on. So in principle,
so the X is
slightly higher spin ball is in theory a slightly better spin number, but we'll use the X to gather a bit of data.
Okay.
So what we'll do with that is T height we can go higher or lower. So if it's lower, just turn it. That's quite high. Turn it clockwise. If you want a bit higher, just turn it anti-clockwise.
Okay.
But we'll see how that one sets up. And would you say when it goes well, from a flight point of view, anything trajectorised, anything noticeable?
Always too high.
Always too high.
Always. My ball flight is just sails sky high and goes. like I never get the penetrating ball flight that I want to see. It's everything's just
always high off the face.
Always high.
Yeah. Okay.
See, that's one of the ones I'd be happy with.
Good swing line, path 0.3 from in to out, so that's nice and stable.
That was, I think, heel. No.
Okay.
But it works.
There we go.
Yeah. And that's the 350T.
Yeah, that's the damage. And one of the things, because you've had a decent amount of speed, club speed on those shots, looking at kind of basically 110.
Yeah.
Then little smooth 106, 107. But the problem is if you get one like that where you can see it really kind of drop in behind and go right, that then is, well, that's 50 yards right.
Yeah.
So, and that, as you say, lost ball. Whereas actually, if you were less speed, you can 30, 35, you still probably going to find it. But at the speed you've got, it's a long way off.
And so I know when I look at the TrackMan myself, it's 1.5 to 112 is really the window on my swing speed. At one point when I first started, I was down at 95.
Yeah.
And that's just, I was so slow because I had no confidence at all that it was just, and it was even, I would say, it was even worse at one because I was going so slow. It just, I was so out of kilter.
No fluidity.
But yeah, so I'd say 1.5 to 112 is roughly where it sits at.
Okay, we'll just get a couple more, just to get a kind of broad average there, and then work through. Yeah, and that's the inevitable next one.
Yeah.
It's interesting if your path's not.
It could neutral to
feel like it might get quite, and I'm sure you say you know your numbers on here, but anyone who says it gets a little inside, I'm normally expecting to be about double that.
Okay.
So 3.8 really
it's not bad, yeah.
But the point is, face to target there is actually pretty close, half a degree.
Yeah.
But it's the shape that resultant shape that puts on it.
And especially because at the first shot, I'm probably aiming up the right-hand side, expecting to come in. Then it goes right, and I'm like, okay, I just centre the fairway, and then it's left and dead. So it's just pure. It's just the fact that I've got no confidence in
aim up
where
the middle
I'm
and hope's
actually
quite a tough
going.
gig, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because in terms of, it's interesting. So good ones are that was a little bit toey, so it took a bit of spin off. But if I go into the numbers side of it, so path numbers are really absolutely fine. They're really pretty orthodox. But we can see the issues coming in from the face to path numbers, and that actually for such a consistent delivery, your angle of attack varies a little bit, and the face to path goes in and out quite a bit. And those two kind of go hand in hand. The more that club gets out of play, starts to your right side, especially where it drops behind, drops under, and in comes the flip or the spoon right. So to go from kind of three or four angle of attack is absolutely fine, but to go to the odd one to eight, that's then, in terms of, you think of the swing as a circle, kind of where that sits within that face has got a lot of time to wrap around to get there. So, but I think that's just where you're managing that right hand miss, because there's nothing swing-wise that looks, it's not volatile, but where that's getting really quite, that one right, you could really see it drop in and hang open. And so I think that element of not being able to just stand and deliver and hit a consistent shot pattern, and with it being such a different setup to the rest of the set, it's not like a feel with your irons can relate to the driver.
No,
so you then kind of rock and hard place kind of stuff. But there's lots of good stuff. You hit up on it the reason bit, so you are going to create launch.
Yeah.
However, as long as you don't get that 3-5 on spin, granted a bit heely, that's the one that really kills you. So if we can keep the spin around because of your ball speed, you can cope with a kind of 1900 to 2000 spin and your launch angle, which a lot of players wouldn't be able to, but I think we're going to potentially need to get it down there if the launch angle stays high.
Okay.
but where you hit up in it 4 or 5 degrees, you're turning a 9.5 degree into a 13, 14 degree head. So chances are the higher launch will retain, but if we can just get that club face back under control.
Yeah.
So good side is club setup and shot pattern mirror one another, which is always reassuring. So what I'm going to do first up, it's almost like a normalise. I'm going to keep that shaft, but I'm going to get one of the current heads, but just a little less loft, and make the balance more neutral. So kind of normalise the setup a little bit and see where that puts us as a sort of benchmark, because at the moment it's so exaggerated, it's kind of a little bit, I'm going to call it a false set of readings, but it's quite distinctive. So I'll whip that head and put one of the current models on. Right. Let's grab. I'll start with TSR3 just because it's the most relevant option. I'll take the loft down a fraction. Do you go out and play many different courses? Or?
Yeah, so we're on a society, we just play around sort of Kent, Surrey. Then we go on holiday 2 or 3 times a year. And yeah, just a lot of club golf.
Yeah.
45 as well. Yeah. The modern day length stuff I've got longer. Anywhere up to almost an inch over the top of that, so nearly at 46 inches.
Let's change that back weight slightly.
Tend to service you any better than
So even with a relatively sort of standard weight, I think its swinging or its setup is relatively tip heavy. Whether there's a little extra weight within the shaft bed as well, but it is fairly strongly balanced. Let's get a different back weight for this.
the direction of the shot and just spin quite a lot like ball speed. So if I give you a driver that you just get out the middle more often than not, even without the dynamics being.
So I'm going to get this down more in line with, it won't be quite as light as where the irons are. So around the D1, D2 marker, just to sort of mirror where the fairway wood is.
Carry numbers and everything are going to be multi-system.
Okay, D2, yeah. There we go. Pop that back in. So we'll see, just from a swinging point of view, hopefully feel a little bit easier just to free that up without having to adjust for the head. But this, say, normalises the setup and gives us a bit more of a benchmark to work with.
Yes, definitely different. Okay. Heel. Right, stay away from the heel.
Okay, so what's quite interesting with it is it's still got an element of looking like it gets slightly behind.
Yeah.
It. So almost by losing that amount of, I mean, granted, going from very head heavy to pretty neutral, there'll be a little bit of adjustment, but even then it didn't look as clean through the ball. The first one looked okay.
Yeah.
But there's a sort of flow and a synchronization that I'm looking for where it allows you just to move and the handle end comes with you. Which doesn't look like it's quite happening with that. So I'm going to go to something with a few grams less than the shaft.
Okay.
Because it wasn't a sort of an immediate eureka moment.
No, it didn't feel like it. It felt like I would say different.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad different. It's just different.
Not quite where we want it to be though. So. Right, let's get this out so I can put the other shafts in. I'll use this as just headwise because it's a relevant start point. Yeah. And then once we get the shaft more settled in, we can see where it's giving on flight and then look at other options from there.
Pretty similar though, it's not massively different. bit more carry consistency out of the
Right.
Tensei.
Okay, you've got a couple of shafts.
Total distance pretty similar.
So I'm just going to lose a few. I don't want to go too kind of weird and set up first, but it's going to lose sort of principal sort of 3 or 4, 4 or 5 grams out of the shaft. I don't actually, interestingly looking at that, I don't want to lose too much feel for the head.
Okay.
You've got, for want of a better phrase, a little bit of a kind of, you've got a bit of a laggy action in your hands.
Yep.
So you naturally create quite a little, you create a little bit of a drop in. But I think if we lose, if we lose too much feel for the bottom end, then actually there's nothing to build speed with.
Okay.
So, obviously we'll test that theory. Theory is one thing. But you almost need to, I don't want to take out that drop because it's something you naturally do. But it's going to be really key finding the right balance from a timing and a squaring point of view.
Okay.
To going to give you enough to hit against and to use to generate the speed without then getting stuck. So primarily that's just got a little bit less shaft weight in.
Okay.
I can never do that. The moment I pull the trigger, that's it.
I knew. I was like, no.
Okay.
That was, I know.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, I'll watch one more.
Ooh.
Well, I think if there's no drastic change
Okay, it's definitely a better setup. There's a little bit more of a trend there, so that's a bit of a toe strike. Face to pile 0, same on the first one was slightly open and a slight toe strike which kind of geared it back in. But there's definitely more consistency there. I want to find where we go too light and then I'll bring it back up. But that should have felt like you could regulate it.
Yeah, it felt a lot more comfortable.
So I want to find where we go too light, find a sort of bottom out. So this one shaft weight tends to, it says 65 and it, if I remember rightly, was more kind of the 65 to 67 end of things. That one's down more like 63. So I'm just going to drop it down a little bit further.
Yeah.
Let's just grab a few.
No. It's the right time to do it, right? Because you get yourself set up and then you can practice with the new gear before next season.
So I assume you were watching Tiger over the weekend.
Yeah, it's nice to see him back.
He's, yeah, I think he's still got by a mile the biggest draw out there. I think almost no matter how rude a health the game's in, it still currently needs him around.
He's just got the Tiger effect. It's just undeniable how big his draw is.
Yeah. It's a bit like years back, if you put an aging Nicklaus or Palmer anywhere, you could guarantee crowds and viewing.
Yeah.
He's still just box office. Okay, there's a little bit, that just looks a little bit flicky through the ball. I think because once you gain a bit of trust and confidence with it, you're not going to, well, we don't want you to have to back off, I want you not have to smash it, but I want you to be able to commit.
Yeah.
So
it felt like it was just not where I needed to be.
yeah, you can see a little bit of a what I call Zorro through the ball. So just wasn't quite there. So I'd rather have one that dropped in a little bit and if anything hung right, because you can then square that off more rather than have to almost sort of manage it not going left.
And especially where I was in this mindset where I've just been trying not to do that.
Yeah.
It's just a backwards feeling to try and have to do that to keep it square.
Mm.
Yeah. A couple of consistent ones in there.
Okay, let's just back up a couple of grams. So into the last one was down at 57, 58 grams.
Okay.
So this one we're back up at 60. Yeah, straight away. I mean, the strike wasn't quite middled, but straight away, as you started down and swung, you could see that the handle stayed out in front of you more. You could see the club drop in a little bit more. So yes, it's gone left through a toe strike, but face to path, half a degree open. So I mean, much better in terms of that timing.
No, that was terrible. Terrible.
Okay, let's see one more of that. So that one looked pretty solid. Okay, that's good. Definitely don't want to go lighter, but into that kind of bottom end of the 60s is definitely the right way.
Area. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So whilst not necessarily middle, a little bit lower in the centre, that's a darn sight more stable. Those first couple there, you're 0.7 face to path, 0.7. Okay, second one got a little bit flippy.
Were they all toe strikes?
They were. Just there was one
terrible toe.
Second one, right, I think second one right on the toe. Which one was the one that was right?
I mean, because that's just completely different anyway.
The first one, sorry, right on the toe, but actually, yeah, the others, centre or just below centre. Previous one, well, the lighter one got a little bit low, and then the 1-2 back, which is actually more similar in weight to this. It's more consistent, but it's just on the toe side. So I'd rather see it a heat map like that because then the more reliable what the club's doing becomes, the more you can regulate that and bring that in. So lighter one with your current ones there, and then heavier one. Again, just tends a little toe side if anything.
That's
so.
I think that's progress then, because it's usually the other side.
So I'm gonna leave, definitely not going to put that one, I'm going to leave that one there for the moment. Now I know where I'm just going to get a couple of others just rather than going back and forth and back and forth. Right. Let's dial this in a little bit more. So yeah, you certainly, so angle attack still stayed strongish, but that, where ball position is relatively far forward, you're always going to create a reasonable angle attack. So the slightly lower loft head, definitely not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So these are all going to sit in that kind of 60 to 64 gram range.
Okay.
It's really just seeing as we go through them, does one just knit things together a little bit better? In principle, they're all relatively stable. This one's got a little bit of kick to it, but the others are all fairly stable tip and lower launch profile in principle. Okay, that was hit. Okay. Good ball speed. Okay. Yeah, so just pushing the weight up a little bit. Interesting. Path slightly more into out. Strike's a little bit more solid on both of those, but it's just dropped swing line a little more to the inside. Okay, I'll see one more of that.
See, and that's when I get into a sort of rhythm, I do tend to see the path come on the inside, and I need to get back into the...
Yeah, and then that last one back at 2.5. And so that's the slightly open face, slight toe strike, just kind of neutralising one another. But actually definitely going back up a little bit in weight, that looked a little bit more solid, a little bit more reliable.
It felt more, I felt like I had more to give with a little bit more weight.
Yep. Okay, but we'll also, I would anticipate we'll also see, the strike is more consistent. So you bring that back in a little bit, then you lose a bit of, like on those where it's seeing it gear around, you lose a bit of that. But that's one of those things where, as it all dials in, you'll then be able to move the strike point a little
And
bit.
that's it. I think for me, it's just having a platform where I can build confidence and correct those faults.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, I'm a little bit lost.
Yeah, where you get, say, that little bit, you got that sort of laggier action with your hands. It's a sort of freer action with your hands. You generate that kind of snap speed.
Yeah.
Always once you get something that's quite kind of, it's all exaggeration with kind of lead ball at the end of a piece of string. It's quite detached in your current setup. Then it's very hard to control that. And then all you're seeing is more of a drop and a catapult, and it just exaggerates a natural tendency anyway. It creates you lots of speed.
Yeah.
But a little more volatility from a club face point of view. So it's where you see someone like Alvaro Quiros on tour has got that real kind of laggy, snappy speed. You've got that with your hands in terms of, rather than being kind of quiet and big kind of body rotation, it's a proper crack of the whip speed. And that just means that you are going to be a bit more sensitive to balance points simply because it's a later
release,
whippier acceleration rather than a big kind of build up and hit. So anyone who's got that little bit of a whip and a rotation to their release pattern, just means we've got to be tighter. There's going to be a setup that's just got to knit it together to get better. But you'll also be pretty darn sensitive to swing weight as well. So
perfect.
So, really with your current one, if that shaft wasn't quite so heavy, I don't think it'd be a million miles off. It's just 4 or 5 grams too heavy.
That was a heel strike, and I think we've lost some weight.
Yeah, just a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I'll pop that other bit back on. It's just a small bit of extra stuff I put on.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like a me terrible swing, but
not too, again, path 2.7.
Yeah,
so
not too bad.
Yeah. Certainly can see where we are at the weights now, rather than being right down at 60 and being a little bit above. Just a little bit more to hit against, to hit with. So certainly in terms of what I don't want to overprotect. I think we need to kind of set it up for when you start to enjoy using the driver rather than
back to
going, oh God,
how
where's
it
this
used
gonna
to
go?
be.
Yeah. That's nice. So again, slight toe strike, hence the shape. But we can see from this, it's just a little on the toe side. Again, face to path 0.7. That one, that sort of literally had what we call kind of time, just like everything started to.
It did feel
connected.
It felt more like a solid strike. I'd be happy, like a swing. I'd feel like I'd be happy with, even though it may not have gone exactly where I would have needed it. I think I would have been happy with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That's okay. There's definitely a best way of describing a kind of the face starting to look a little quieter through the ball. So the variations face and not seeing that last minute what I call catapult through the ball. Yeah, that's much more stable through the ball. So what we can see with that is, so that'll be more centered. But actually in terms of what I can see with you there is, as you're coming through the ball, there's more of an extension through. So that means everything's coming through in sync with your body rotation rather than going a little out. That creates that whip. The better setup it is, the more it allows everything to stay together, squarer through the ball. So in terms of tolerance on, if we're looking back at numbers here, those face to path numbers, the first one had a little bit more draw where that bit of weight came off. Once we put that back on, much smaller numbers face to path. And you're not going from 2 closed, 2.5 open. There's
less
1.5 open after seeing a toe one go left, and then starting to regulate in. Strike point with these slightly heavier ones, that efficiency 148, 49s, that's really nice. Light one was okay. It's interesting, you can look at the numbers, it looks pretty good. But what we can see, I'll just close these down so we can see more more shots on the screen. You're at 105 with that, and you're at 107 with the heavier shaft. So you can use the heavier weight to develop a bit more speed. Whereas I think at the lighter weight, you know, you can see the strike point not as good with that Ventus Blue at 57 grams. So it's just, and foreclosed face to pass as well, so just overpowering that weight and flipping it. This sort of weight's allowing everything to kind of drop in and stay with you better. So it's certainly a better weight there. And as a result, okay, strike point went off there, but over the Graphite design, the VF at 60 grams, you've gone from 281 average to 288, 292. So that Diamana was slightly, the previous shaft was slightly longer, but we can see tolerance-wise on the club face 2.9 or 1.9, so a little bit more variable. So as you just described earlier on, you know, especially at shooters, you know, the left-right dispersion tightening up is definitely where we want to be. So I'd take reliability on club face versus a couple of extra yards.
Oh yeah,
but,
I think especially at shooters, we've got quite a few people who can't hit it as far. Yeah, they're always in the fairway. And like I may be 100 yards past them. Yeah. But I could be 100 yards past them in the bush. And
but they all say, oh, I'd love to have the length.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'd rather just be where you are.
I want your straightness. So let me just test this as well. But nice, that's also nice ball flight. So in terms of that optimization, you can see there, technically there's another 1 or 2 miles an hour ball speed, but it's a very safe spin rate and launch. So it's in a really nice flight window. Okay. Rather than getting a volatile kind of 16 launch, 1500 spin, that spin helps just to kind of hold the flight a little bit as well. Okay. Quite interesting actually with that last shaft had to add a little bit of head weight to get it there, so the shaft's a little less tip bounce than some of the others, and this we're kind of player to player. It's so I need weight in the bottom of the shaft. Yeah. Whereas, interestingly enough, we don't want to go counterbalanced or anything. You need a bit of bottom end weighting, but actually probably a bit of bottom end weighting and a bit of extra head weight rather than all of it being done in the shaft. I think. Be interesting going back to this following the previous model.
That wasn't a great strike, but...
No, but what's quite interesting is having had something where it wasn't quite as tip balanced. Yeah. We go more tip balanced and see one more, but that's very much 6 degrees open on the face. So that brings back in, it's not as exaggerated as that one, setup wise, but it brings back in that miss, which we've not had with the other one. Yeah. Yeah,
same again. It just, I can feel it just... Yeah. I know that feeling well, and then I know the next one's just going to be...
And that's in a good place. Yeah, the next one you're going to stall and wrap. Yeah. So that's, quite definite. Yeah. So we don't want too much in the shaft. Okay.
Yeah, no, I know that feeling very well.
I'm not going to use that one because that's going to be a bit more tip weighted, and I'll hold that there for the moment. Okay. I'll get one other just to test that theory. What do you do work-wise?
IT. So I work for an IT company.
In particular?
DXE technology. So we are Man United, one of Man United's sleeve sponsors. Okay. We're a merger between IT companies, but we deliver IT services to companies, and I sort of support the IT for the IT company.
It's going to go way beyond my pay grade, and I look like I can do stuff with the computer because I can type quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised about how non-technical the IT industry are. But no, it's...
Turn it off, turn it back on, that's my...
I mean, that is the just general fix. Turn it on, turn it off, and you're there. Yeah, however they say it, it's always on and off.
So just testing that for you, going to something that's a little less tip-weighted shaft-wise, keeping a bit of head weight there.
I jumped at that.
Still a little right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minimum requirement. Yeah.
Low in the face.
Okay, that's slightly lighter.
It's strange because
Back nearer 60 grams, and that didn't compute.
it was strange because it felt really nice, but then felt too light. I don't know.
It dropped a couple of grams.
It felt really nice, but then it also just, it felt like I'd get really erratic with it.
Right back to that's Spec at 61. So it just shows actually how sometimes well, one, it shows we are actually reassuringly sensitive creatures.
Yeah.
You know, those sort of small differences. And for you, because it's that slightly kind of, want a better phrase, laggier, whippier speed generation, it creates I guess a little bit more, it's a slightly sharper acceleration rate, therefore it kind of amplifies that change in balance and change in setup. So it just makes you a little more sensitive to that side of it than a lot of golfers would be.
Okay.
But it should mean that when it's right, it should just feel a lot simpler. There should be kind of a, you know, I think we're likely to get into kind of one or two standout shafts, possibly even just one. Yeah, so we go back to that one that was the better one from a delivery point of view earlier.
And
straight away it's just boom.
I just do less.
Point shoot.
I just feel like feel like I know I'm doing less because the face isn't all over the place.
Yeah.
When I'm coming through, I'm not just drive. I just feel like I'm more with it.
Yeah.
Which is a strange feeling for me. But even when I know I've had a bad takeaway where I'd want to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, again,
it's still
0.6. There's just time with that. Yeah, look, I'm just going to pop that. That's the one that's looked like you've got the most time to find square.
Yeah, because
and saying that's just again the strike point, probably a little low, little toe side. Yeah, and it's just geared it around a bit. But you know, with the previous one there, you know, very, very stable on the club face. Yeah, it's 0.6, 1.1. Okay, 2 and a bit, but the path is a bit more into out. So you know, 1.4, 0.7. You know, the first one at 3, but then everything's stabilised. So it's a much, much more stable club face through, and then.
And even there, because I felt like I wanted to back out of that when I got to the top, but I was able to just get it back. Whereas usually those ones where I want to back out of, they'll be gone, and I know they'll be gone.
I think on that one, I don't think we needed this. Yeah, good ball speed on that last one as well. So let's just cross-reference back to this.
Probably feels a bit easier to.
So that one, yeah.
Just.
I watched one with that. You could see just roll more.
I felt like I was held off. I'm not holding off, but it just didn't feel connected as much.
Yeah. So there's just a little bit more volatility. You can see it's just a little more going on through. So you face the target's pretty good, but you're having to manoeuvre your swing around a little bit
Because it felt like when I got to the top there, I almost tried to hold off to bring the arms down together with it.
Yeah. So
whereas it wasn't
so
as
you're having to match yourself to the club rather than the other way around. Yeah.
Because it felt like I was turning, and I knew it was just going to be out there. And I was like, just how do I bring it back? But
there's not a lot of time to
to
find the square. I just want to go back to one other before, but I don't think we'll beat that one.
Yeah.
You know, so if you think about it, if you hit a drive there now at 225, and then you hit that at 190, you get into some much longer path.
Just because this was one of the earlier ones we hit. I just want to double check with this.
Okay.
Okay, that's right. I'll get rid of that one.
But
it becomes, so what that shows is once you get used to not having to manage the club face, how anything else, suddenly the dispersion pattern really kicks up, because your body will just take path of least resistance. It will just, once you can start to swing and move freely, that then shows you how much of a compensation you have to make to square it off.
Yeah.
So,
and because it felt really tough. To just
And so for you versus your action and the way you generate your speed versus a lot of other players, it's just going to be that much more noticeable. So hence like that for the first swing, it's not a weird delivery, but you can just see how far out the timing goes.
Yeah.
So let's reference that. I'll get a couple of other heads just to make that down here. So you can see swing rate wise, D1, just basically D1 and a half, give or take 0.1 of a swing rate point, D1.6. It's a much more neutral setup than the D7. Yeah. I won't be cool enough to ask you to hit this straight after, but just I'll pull it back together so you can just feel where that balance sits relative to it.
Yeah, that looked in a really good spot there. Yeah. So rather than the 7 wood pen,
That should feel pretty damn head heavy.
Yeah, it does. It feels like a different.
But hence that your first move, if you move freely and naturally with it, as we've seen with these other ones, one, the dead weight of the shaft is a few grams heavier, but there's so much weight in the bottom end that hence it's that plus a bit in terms of where the right hand side goes. So I'll pop the other shafts back on. I'm going to get a couple of other heads.
Okay.
Right. So because of your launch profile, we do need something with a strong loft to it. So actually the flight you're getting off that TSR3 is pretty good. It's in a good place, but that's the 8-degree head.
Okay.
So we need that lower, basically lower actual loft, but we don't necessarily need something that's a knuckle-on spin.
Okay.
So hence actually, like with your irons, you can see 7-iron spin with the Pro V1s at 5,000. Actually, we could do with that being a bit higher. So it's more getting launch angle down rather than nose diving spin.
Okay.
But they'll tend to be the low spin heads to get the loft where we need to, and the dynamic loft anyway. So. So where you'll also be affected is a bit in terms of some of the heads. If you've got something that's too back weighted, that also creates a little bit of opening and closing. So actually some of the, where something like the Titleist, that TSR3, because they've not put loads of weight at the back, actually the slightly smaller head style might mean a bit more face stability as well.
Yeah, because it was strange, because when I went to Titleist, obviously I was a 21, 22 handicapper, and you'd think you'd fit into a TS2.
Yeah.
Or you think it would be a little, and I thought I'd be in AP1s, AP3s, and it just wouldn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, and certainly driver head-wise, where I've clicked on something which will just take a couple of seconds to load up. I should have written it in. But where the weight's so much further away from the shaft, it just gears it a little bit more. So where you get that little bit of a lag and whip, that just accentuates, or it'll want to open it up a little bit more in the backswing. Well, and also where you in transition, where you launch a little higher, again, the TS2 just spins it that bit more. So that's why even the TSR2 now is lower spin than TS was. They're not as higher flighted, but they could they'd be able to get the actual launch profile down a little stronger with a smaller head.
Yeah.
The gapping from here will be about 10 yards because of the spin and the descent angle, the 12 yards will be as
Very toey.
as I do. So that's the carry.
second one was better through. I'll
Yeah.
see one more of that. Not quite as stable. I mean, that last one was hit well, but the consistency that we didn't see with this shaft, one of them go heavily right with the Titleist. So it's like that last one's better ball speed.
Yeah.
Just turned over a little and actually pulled the spin down maybe slightly more than I'd like. But not quite as consistent.
No, it
It could be that footprint of the head side.
it didn't feel bad. It just wasn't an immediate.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. It definitely looked like you had to find the face with it a little bit more.
Yeah, it did. I felt like I was just had to sort of find my way a little more than, I guess, how comfortable the TSR3 felt.
Yeah. I mean, some of it can be. You know, if it's a visual you like, you relax, you swing a bit more freely. But it could well be just not having quite such a lighter crown, not quite as deep a weighting. Yeah, there's a strong argument to say, well, is that helping just regulate the face a little bit more? Check the weight on the bottom. No, that is the heavy one. Okay, it's got to add a little bit of weight to this head. Okay. So something like, for example, Paradigm, Triple Dome 1 has a little bit more, tends to launch it slightly higher relative loft, but also that could get that knuckle on spin, especially where your strike's on the toe side. Yeah. There are certain heads that I'm going to avoid like the plague because of that toe strike.
TaylorMade one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell you now I don't get on with TaylorMade.
That and head weight. They're a slightly stronger head weight in the main. Particularly the plus, which would be the head that would get the launch angle down a little bit more. So, so actually, all that's going to do, and then with a toe strike, the tendency to get the spin coming off. Yeah. That's where TSR3 for me, with mine, I'm actually slightly more of a heel strike, but because I do play with a slight draw, that what I don't want is that volatility of spin. So where for you, that's actually, we didn't see anywhere it nosedived the spin off.
Yeah.
So this one's the Srixon ZX5 LS.
So this might be one for the time being, depending on budget and where you want to spend it. It might be where actually you say, well, in the hybrid boss for the time being, spend the budget on driver, fairway, irons, because we've got some good results of those in time.
Okay. Definitely straight away moved better.
Yeah.
Than the Ping. Just looked like the Titleist in terms of that connection and
it felt
simplicity.
like the Titleist. It felt like I didn't have to worry about anything but the ball.
Don't we all? You know, but I'm just giving the options in terms of, I think if you had a fire.
That was a bad swing.
Came out of a bit, but I would rather see that tendency as a slight push miss than the one that then rips left as a miss. Slightly higher launch, interesting.
I
think that was a bit of a reaction to the last one.
Yeah.
But it's not exaggerated.
No, and there's still,
Okay.
it's not as disastrous as it usually is. Right, no exaggeration.
It's just a bit of weight that's come off that. But it's interesting. So it is a noticeably, I'm just going to check strike, but noticeably higher launch. I'm just going to see whether that's to do with, okay, there's a little bit more of a variation of high face to low face.
One definitely felt low.
That last one was a little bit higher up the face. And that one makes sense being a little lower, but it's interesting enough from a launch to spin point of view. The average is pretty good, but it's high, generally on the higher side, whereas the Titleist a little bit stronger. The strike pattern is a little bit more reliable. What'll be interesting, just going to put that Titleist back on. Actually, I mean, result-wise, good ones, good out of it. Certainly kept launch and spin in a good place. But you can see the consistency of the height of flight out of the Titleist.
Yeah.
So that potentially, I think it's going to be, gut feel is it's going to give you a slightly more reliable kind of window.
Okay.
So visually a more consistent flight. So I'll put that back on and we'll. So based on that, I might just, we'll do a couple. I may lift the T up. There's certain heads where getting, you know, the middle of the face, the sweet spot's slightly higher up the face than others.
Okay.
But we'll see a couple back with that before I do make a change.
And do you notice any gapping between those two in some of the yardages? Or, yeah, so what would you typically, how far would you get that one? How far would you?
A little ahead of that one.
That was.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that is because what they do in that bottom base sector is gap wedge.
That one dropped a little more inside. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's effectively what's happening is that the sandwich, in terms of the loft that's
Don't do anything.
they largely the same. So if you go back phase, you still 40 years ago, a sandwich was 50, 60 degrees.
Jumped at it.
Interesting.
Jumped at it.
Interesting. Let's see one more there. Just going back, this looks a little less, just looks a bit more varied.
All of a sudden you've got 14 degrees difference in loft. So
That was high in the face.
A little higher up the face on that one. Yeah. Face looked a bit more stable. That one's got a little more out the toe.
and that bridges the gap between the sandwich.
Interesting, that's a bit more, I wonder whether the first one spooked it, there's a bit more variable than the previous, but just do a couple more, I'll put the Srixon head back on.
Okay.
That looked back to the more stable.
Back to the feel.
Yeah, so
just
still a hair, so the draw's the toe strike side of it. You just rein the swing back a little bit on that, but flight's back in that same window as you were, but yeah, that's just a little on the toe side, hence the draw. But a much more stable face again. I'll put the Srixon head back on. I had a little bit more of a flip.
So I would probably recommend going to the gap wedge. Now keep your sandwich at around 56 again.
Interesting.
So were you looking to update this or were you? Yeah, okay.
Just because of where the flight height was, I'll just take the loft down a fraction on the Srixon head.
Okay.
And I'll put the weight back on that came off. Yeah, interesting where that just looked like a little bit more feeling for the strike end. The good one, the stable one looked great again.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Why?
That's one way. There's a chance that as you're starting to trust them, I'll see this, I might need to put just a little bit more head weight on.
Okay.
Just test with this one, putting just a little bit more on the club head, whether as you're starting to, it doesn't necessarily mean more speed going in, but it means just a little bit more
Aggression.
yeah, a little more energy going through the club. If we make the swing weight slightly heavier, does that actually help to knit it together? Because, so from how good the Titleist head looked first time around, that batch didn't look quite as clean. So it's not a lot different. It'd be interesting to see with this as we push the swing weight up a little bit, does that help get that time back through impact again?
Like that.
Okay. Okay, let me do the same with the Titleist. That's got a knuckly spin one.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a square club base, so
Yeah.
it is the low spin model. But, let's just see the same. I'll give you a little bit more head weight on the Titleist head. Just go a fraction,
The whole principle behind it is
fraction more.
over in Indonesia, but effectively it's based over in the UK. Let's say what he's trying to do is.
What I'm going to do as well that I can do on this, I'm just going to move that mass at the back just a hair toe side, just to, essentially it's moving the centre of gravity a little bit more toe side, so more behind the strike point, which helps just reduce a bit of the gearing. So it doesn't necessarily fade bias it massively, but it's shifting the CG a little more under the toe.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let me take that extra head weight back off.
Yeah, it felt.
Okay, let's just go back to that. But interesting enough, ball speed up going back onto this head. So we've hit best part of 161 there. That looked better.
It's just mental how
That looked better, yeah.
just that little bit away.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that first one, even that went right, that looked like it was back into dropping into sort of just hung there a little long.
Yeah.
And then that one squared off, so slight toe strike, but back into square, back into a bit more time. But ball speed's up with this head. Yeah. So maybe a little lower on the face.
Yeah,
but
it's.
that's. So there's a little bit, I think, for you. I mean, that one path got a bit more into out.
Yeah, and that's
it's just getting
that toe.
that strike point away from the toe. Yeah, if we can start to bring that in a bit more, then it's just going to lose a bit of that gearing right to left,
And I feel like
which then, your average path, face to path, absolutely fine. It just loses that overdraw from a toe strike.
And so I guess based from where I've been in the last 2 weeks, I know it's been Healy.
Okay, yeah.
Getting more towards the toe. It means it's working. It's just that I need to.
Yeah, it's just then just
bring
reining
it back
a little bit. But I think overall, so what we're not seeing out of that one, say slight toe strike there, that's still got a 2 on the front of the spin.
Yeah.
Which, the Srixon then dipped down like 1500, the Ping down to 1700. That is a much safer spin rate for you. That was the one before we took the weight off. So there are a couple. Whether there's a little bit of a lost zone swing wise, certainly I think moving that weight out of the toe just mitigates some of that gearing. But you're back into that kind of set. It's a very, very safe spin. This might show it as slightly high, but it's still within the blue area. But that's also little toe, little low. You bring that up a little bit from slightly low toe into the centre, then the spin drops a little bit, the launch angle picks up a little bit, and you lose a little bit of that gearing. But it's a consistent strike path, and that's just then, say, if you've regulated it away from the heel, it's just then softening it back a little bit. But ball speed wise, that's then got to numbers we haven't seen out of the others. And launch and spin in a really nice window when the solid hits, even on the slight toe strike, it's not got the scary low spin one. I think that's what marks that head out. That's certainly why I went to that as well. And that little bit lighter on the shaft weight. So it's a few grams lighter on the shaft, still keeping a bit of balance in the tip section. But that lower loft, that smaller head style, definitely a good thing for you on that part. So one of the things that we do as a process, so everything's built in the workshop next door. So we get head and shaft components in and then build them to, these are all calibrated every morning. So the swing rates and everything are identical to what you've used, which for you is really important, to what you've used in the day-to-day. One of the other processes we do is the shaft puring. So best analogy is like balancing a car wheel, but once the shaft is trimmed to length and trimmed to frequency and kind of, if for example, like for you, I'd just shore up the tip. I wouldn't go, so flex-wise, stay in the S, because if we go the X, it tips the weight too heavy. But we can shore up the tip a little bit more by just shortening the tip section. So it's once we've trimmed those, it's then put raw into the clamp of the machine. Tips put under a load cell and rolled to get the 360s, 360 consistency, and look at where the stiff and the softer points are, because it'll exert different upward forces based on its 360 profile. And then based on the stiffest point is then find its most stable orientation, so that when it's built into the club, the most stable point goes target side, because as the shaft stresses and loads, it stresses that way, it twists, so it's going to recover back onto its most stable point, so hence the balancing a car wheel side. So a bit of a visual feel analogy would be, I'll get you to wire this as well, someone's betting that, that way around flat is very, very stable. If you twist it a little bit, you'll feel it start to pull, and that's really the effect. So you're getting the, even though it's still back and through, but that you see it start to twist a bit. And that's really what shaft puring does. It means it stabilizes the face and reduces a bit of offline twisting through impact. So if it's offline, again, it's going to give a little bit more. If it's on its stable point, it holds a bit tighter. So it tightens up spin and dispersion a little bit, but it really means we get the properties we've chosen that shaft for. Great. So, but that's a process that we go through as part of the build. But it does mean, logo-wise, we're often seeing them coming out on one of the 4 points of the compass. But the logo could be
I've never bothered with the logo.
So the other element's grip, grip type and size. Let's see your hand dimension. So your hand dimension gets sort of longer that way, whereas mine kind of kicks back a little bit more. You're longer in that side of the hand. So actually one of the aspects, I'll take a grip of that. So top hand could go a hair bigger, but that's not far off. This is really going to be down the bottom hand. So that finger, it doesn't really fill out that finger. So you're kind of getting spacing around it, kind of hangs off a little bit. So for someone who's got a little bit of rotation to their action, the less stable it fits in that bottom hand, it can move around a little bit more and destabilize even further.
And I would say this one's definitely thicker. So I think these have got probably 5 layers.
I was going to say they're definitely bigger than standard. Yeah. See how that fits in the bottom hand as well, actually. Let's see. Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't go any smaller than that. So one of the grips, so I see the top hand again, if you can grip them again. Yeah, because I mean, that actually size-wise, that fits well. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily need to go to, I wouldn't go to the mid-size, because I think that would get the top hand too big. I'm going to get one of the +4 grips just to see how that sits in bottom hand as well. Great, so I'll just grab that. So yeah, you still need the top hand that little bit bigger. Yeah, so there are a couple of ways of doing it. I think we still need, so what the +4 style grid is, it takes the tapering out. So whilst you definitely need the top hand bigger, and again, because of dimensions where you're longer in that index finger side of the hand, proportionally that bottom, as that grip tapers down,
it needs to be.
And any grip tapers down a little bit apart from the +4s. We just need to reduce that tapering slightly. So even with the extra layering in the top, we need proportionally a little bit more on the bottom hand just to fill out that bit of your hand size.
Yeah, because I've been mid-size, I've been up and a bit down, and I've just found that just so far it's been a standard grip just with loads of tape. Yeah, because the mid-size will take that top hand just a little bit big, but the bottom hand's probably pretty darn close. So there are, I mean, you can do it with layering. It's easier to do it with something like the +4 because it's less extra tape. And then with how sensitive you are to weighting, we're not putting loads of layers of tape on, which ups the weight in the gripper, and then you got to up the bottom end. So that sort of softens off the weight gain of the grip end. And grip, from a grip type point of view, I'll grab the ones that do that with. You've got the tall velvet, which is the same feel as what you've currently got. And the other ones that are easy to do it with, got those, but the cording in the top hand, not everybody used
likes.
to play this, and I've just much prefer 12 velvet now.
And the only other one would be that. There's a little more tread, but it's not a rubber, so that will be a more familiar feel.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a 12 velvet.
But we'd certainly put extra. It wouldn't need as many extra layers in the bottom hand as the top hand. So I'll double check the exact loft range. So we go, because you've already got effectively 4 extra layers in the bottom hand. So we don't need to build up the bottom hand quite as much as the top hand. So we go the 4 layers in the top.
Yep.
But only a couple of extra in the bottom hand because we've already got the scale there. So only other question on that would be, do you want that on the top?
I don't mind.
Or you could put it that way around.
Yeah, I'll go logo up.
Yeah.
Logo up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, logo up.
At worst, you can always take it off and change it around. So essentially, yeah, it's a little less loft. The current heads are just more stable across the face. Actually, the Titleist heads this year, ball speed maintenance has been really good, but you've not got the volatility on spin that other models give you, which is why that one's marked out. And then it's the Tensei 1K Pro White 60 in the stiff, but we'll just shore up the tip end a little bit more. Length can say, well, this is going to be 1/4 inch less. We don't need to go longer than vertical standard at 45. The longer you go, the more that's going to bring in a little bit of rotation. But that bigger bottom hand grip should again just stabilise in your right hand, stabilise the face a little bit more. Yeah, but a nice game.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm happy. It felt comfortable.
Cool.
And yeah, step in the right direction. I just need a platform to actually get better with, rather than just.
Yeah, the nice thing, it's quite a. I mean, in terms of dead weight difference, it's quite a pointed change. We're still keeping some feel for the club head, but it's just very exaggerated where it is. So it's no great surprise that it's been hard work. So actually, yeah, in terms of weight-wise, going from 336 to 325.
Okay.
So a lot of that weight's in the head.
Yeah.
So those sort of 6 odd, 5, 6, 5, and a bit, 5 swing rate points, because that's D1.8. That is basically 10 grams. So there's slight shifts around the kind of grip weights and things from there, but yeah, it's a few grams in the shaft, but a heck of a lot in the head. So,
Yeah.
good change.
Perfect. Good.